The dawn of civilization. Primitive. Dangerous. Exciting. The handwriting is on the wall. If the human race is ever going to amount to anything, it needs
the most civilized caveman I have ever seen.
Look who's come out of his cave.
Hey everyone, this is James from Cave Dweller Music, and we've got Brendan here, my co-host. Today we are talking to Hyde and Joe from the band Carrion. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, obviously you've been on the show before, Hyde. Joe, it's the first time for you. It's been a while though since we chatted. So what's been new since the last podcast we did with you?
I actually checked earlier today, and I don't know if it's entirely accurate, but I think it's been about 6 months or so since the last time.
That's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I feel like it's been a lifetime since then.
I know, it feels so much longer. But yeah, since then, I guess the last time we talked was when we had just signed to Brutal Resonance Records, and we were putting out the revised edition of Testament of the Exiled. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it. Maybe I did give like a little hint or something that time that we were working on something new. But that's pretty much what we've been doing. Even then, when we did that interview, I was working on this new album that will be out in November this year. And I think that was just around the time where Joe joined the band as well.
Nice.
Yeah, actually it was. Yeah, I think it was. I remember you mentioning that last time. So what I just realized is there's probably a lot of people who aren't familiar with your music who didn't hear the last podcast. So do you want to tell people a little bit about Carrion and what it's about?
Yeah, so Carrion is it's I guess in the industrial rock metal world, whatever you want to call it. You know, it's synthesizers and heavy guitars and screaming and all that stuff, and you know, a few ballads here and there. It's just something that I started for myself a couple of years ago, just fucking around and learning, just diving into the world of electronic music after playing in a bunch of more traditional like punk and metal bands and that kind of thing.
And obviously it seems to be an area that you've really fell in love with, right?
Yeah, you know, I just the part about industrial that always fascinated me was just the idea of how, I guess, how lawless it is. You know, like it's like you want to make music, you don't even need traditional instruments. Mm-hmm. Like it's more punk than punk. You know, you can just make a song out of like banging pots and pans together, literally.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know,
very DIY.
Yeah, and like, you know, taking that and just combining it with all like the rock and metal stuff that I was listening to in my teenage years, like Wasp and Megadeth and all that. So,
Joe, I know that you have low battery, so they may lose you on this call. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about you since you joined the band and how that's been working on the new album?
Sure, yeah. It's been an experience for sure, because like coming from where I come from, which is I suppose more traditional in the two guitars, bass, drums setup, with the electronics, sort of going to something that's vastly more electronics heavy and sort of adding, you know, the bass to that, you know, finding new melodic elements to play with has been really, really fun. You know, I've known Hyde for a really, really long time through previous projects that we've been in, and it was just through oh, what if we did this together? What if we did that together? And I think it was Hyde that sort of said to me, it was like, we're doing all this stuff, why don't you join the band? And it was like, I was a little apprehensive at first, but the opportunity to play around with some of the really cool stuff that Hyde does was too much to pass up. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun sort of getting to try something new.
That's awesome. And I know that you have another project of yours, which I want to ask you about while we still have you, Vanity Kills.
Yeah. Wait, you want me to talk about Vanity Kills?
Yeah, tell us a
sure.
little bit about Vanity Kills while we have you on the line.
I want to know about it because I really don't know anything.
Okay, so Vanity Kills is my sort of pet project that I started way back in 2012, which was meant to be purely a studio project, just songs. I worked as a gun for hire for a long time, and I accumulated a whole bunch of material and decided to record it. Vanity Kills was the name I gave it, and it just sort of developed into a full industrial metal band that we're now touring our second album on Chapter 2, The Enemy. So that's been loads of fun too.
Has COVID and stuff affected your ability to play, or have you just guys been able to go around and do your thing?
No, it's been a huge impact. We scheduled our release for August last year, which happened to land smack dab in the middle of the pandemic. So it sort of curbed all ideas of touring that album. So it's only now in the last few months that we've been able to get back out and do stuff. And hopefully soon we'll be able to get out with Carrion, and I get to play double duty for a few nights. Nice. and play with both bands eventually.
That's awesome. Hyde, I know that while we're on the topic of side projects, we'll come back to Karen in a second, but I know you released a really interesting album. I think it was earlier this year or late last year. That was sort of an 80s gothic rock kind of project that you put together.
Yeah, it was just something I just did for fun, really, just killing time. I think I released 2 EPs and then I had a third one written. But it's not really anything serious or anything that I plan to do much of anything with, really. It was just something I did like in the span of a week for fun.
Okay.
He's far too modest. The Dove Tribe stuff is fucking amazing, and anyone listening to this needs to go check that out.
I agree. I second that. We covered that with a review, and honestly, that's some really solid 80s goth rock stuff. It's awesome. Very stripped back and bare, but fantastically written.
Yeah, I think, at the time, because you also have to consider that while that happened, we were in the middle of, I guess we were sort of getting towards the end of recording stuff for this new Carrion album, and so it's just like the change of scenery, like spending just 12, 14, 15 hours a day doing this very heavily synth-based thing, and modular synths and all that stuff, and then I guess it's just like a nice break from that and kind of going back to basics a little bit and just have a guitar, a very basic beat, a bit more stripped down.
So, I mean, Carrion obviously changes with every album. It's a different beast with each release. This latest one, it's gone in a really interesting direction with the vocals and the beats themselves. Do you want to tell us a little bit about sort of the process with how you made the decision to go in that vocal direction?
Well, with the vocals?
Yeah, because Brendan and I were talking about this today, and we found the vocals really unusual.
I felt
we really like them.
It's like amazing, kind of like demonic-y, alien, like, I don't know, something happened. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Of course I want to do something new with every album, I mean, even if you go back and listen, I don't know if you would even be able to find it anymore. It's probably out there somewhere, but if you listen to everything that I've done under the Carrion banner from start to where we are now in chronological order, you're going to listen to anything from very experimental kind of ambient stuff to very EBM based electronica, and then you have something like the Iconoclasm album where the guitars come in, and then with the last album there's the modular stuff, and this one is like another leap in a new direction. And as for the vocals, I think through the interviews that I've done recently, it's been fairly well documented that I listen to more 80s rock than any, industrial stuff. So to me, that's just kind of channeling the stuff that I grew up listening to, like Wasp and Motley Crue. And, yeah, sure, it doesn't necessarily sound exactly like that, but it's just the idea of that type of thing, bringing in some of that influence.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up a lot of different influences on the album. The last one kind of was, I mean, this was my perspective, but there was some like raw black metal stuff in there, some influence. Like it was very stripped back, very raw, like vocally and sound wise, and like the DIY sort of feeling to it. And this is very different. This is like, it's got I guess a bit of a fuller sound, and a bit more like of a beat happening.
I think, for the previous album, in hindsight, at least now when I'm able to listen to that, and then I'm able to listen to the new stuff, I think me and Joe were talking about this not that long ago, and we settled on describing the previous album as a little bit more ambient, not necessarily in terms of dark ambient as in the genre or anything, but just the feel of it, like it's that kind of slower, atmospheric kind of thing. I mean, sure, you did have the more fast-paced, aggressive songs like Until the Reaper Comes, or like the really heavy chugging things like Putting Tape Over Martyrs' Mouths. But yeah, I think if speaking about it in more symbolic terms, so to speak, you could almost look at that album as a prologue of sorts, and then this one is where you really like dive into whatever it might be.
Right.
But then I think another aspect of it is also, just I mean, there's the, I guess, the more boring side of it, which is just production, which it's not necessarily boring, but the reality of it is that between the last album and this album, I've just been watching and reading and talking to people and learning more about the production side of things, and then applying what I learn throughout the process, which that's obviously going to affect the final result. And another thing was, as Joe mentioned, we do have plans of doing shows. So this album is also very, it's kind of written with the live show in mind, which does have a bit of an impact on not just how the songs sound, but also, keeping in mind that, I want to be able to play these songs and stay as true as possible to what you hear on the album without having, 16,000 laptops with backing tracks or anything like that going on.
Right.
And then it's just a more energetic aspect of it. I would probably say that this album has a bit more energy to it. It's a bit more lively.
Definitely. Yeah, I felt that as well. It's definitely got more of a pace and an energy to it than the last one.
Yeah.
I mean, so for the people listening now, what singles have you released so far? You got Shatter the Seals, Mesmer 2, I believe, is out, and the other one was Revenant, right?
Yeah, the first single was Shatter the Seals, and the B-side, Mesor, that's a reworked version of a song from the album that I released in 2019 called Iconoclasm, where I think what we did was I know Joe recorded some bass for it. I did some new synths, and I think I redid the guitar and the vocals and some, smaller like arrangement details here and there. But overall, it was just at the time when Iconoclasm came out, and it goes back to learning about production and kind of figuring out what I want and all these things. At the time, I was happy with it, but then as the years have gone on, and now I kind of look at it like there's a lot that could be done better, even not even just in terms of the production, but more so in terms of recording quality. I mean, that album was recorded at a time where I had just come back from America. I had ended approximately 2-year-long relationship, and just all of this garbage going into getting to the point of making that album and just being in a place where it just wasn't the most convenient place, I guess, to record, like living with other people, and then with my sleep schedule, no one wants to like have someone fucking screaming at 3 a.m. So that kind of affected some of how that album came out. So when I just completely by accident stumbled upon the stem files and the original project files for some of the songs from that album, just as we're about to release the first single from this new album, I was like, well, this is, it's a good opportunity to do something that I've been wanting to do for a while and kind of tie it in with this new thing.
Mm-hmm. So
and then Revenant is the second single, which we released September 3rd.
Okay. Just a quick question on that last one. Is that single that you remastered, is that going to end up on the album as well, or is that just going to be part of that single?
No, that's just part of the single, but a lot of the songs are like, I like the songs as far as the ideas that I had for them. So, there might be songs from that album that I would want to play live, even though I don't necessarily like how they turned out on the album. And Messor was definitely one of those songs that I always envisioned us playing live. And I just so part of putting that on that single was, giving it a more proper version that's more true to how it sounds in my head, but also to kind of introduce something from that time period of the band, so that when we do go out and we do play that song amongst songs from this new album, as well as Testament of the Exiled, people will have some sense of familiarity with it.
Right, that makes sense. And now it's in a format where you can actually accurately play it live as well as sound like something they've heard.
Yeah, and of course, I always, I've probably told Joe this, as well as Sam, our third member. I've told them both this probably several thousand times by now, but even though I started this on my own, I did always intend for it to be a band. So I do try to treat it as such, rather than treating it as my solo project where these other people are just, I'm not trying to be the boss of anyone. So, right. Even something like re-recording old songs or something like that, a part of that is also to make it so that Joe or Sam also can be part of that and kind of feel like they have contributed to that as well.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
It sort of functions as a nice a sort of pass through from the old stuff to the current lineup. So it gives me and Sam an opportunity that when we go out and we play that stuff live, it doesn't feel like we're playing covers of the old stuff. It feels like it's something that belongs to the era that we're from. as well.
Right. And how did you guys sort of come to be a band together? So how did Hyde? How did you meet Joe and your third member?
I don't know, Joe. I don't know if you're gonna remember this. It's a while ago. You
I can
no
I can remember.
I'm not talking about us meeting, but it's something I saw you share a couple of months ago on Facebook or something. Was a memory of when you, I think it was the music video for Addiction, and it was a memory or something where apparently it was like 8 or 9 years ago or something, and I'm pretty sure when that was released, when you released that video, or the first album by Vanity Kills or something. I think that might be when we first spoke.
I think that's kind of where it came from, was that I know that at some point you had in some way, and I'm not sure to what extent, but you in some way followed or been aware of the bands that I'd been in. So Texas Drag Queen Massacre or I'll Be Damned. And then of course I put out the new Vanity Kills, the new at the time Vanity Kills material, and you were quite friendly at the time with my drummer, from the original lineup, and I think that's where we got sort of clicked into talking and sort of online hanging out.
I mean, now that you mention, what was it, Texas Drag Queen Massacre?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've completely forgotten about that, but that might actually be the first time or the first thing that you were involved with that I somehow found. I have no fucking idea. Yeah. I did talk to the previous Vanity Kills drummer, and what's funny is at some point, me and that drummer, I talked about him just filling in as a drummer for some Carrion shows. So it's just kind of funny how it worked out that connection between these two bands has kind of existed for years.
It's one of those weird things. I think the industrial scene in and of itself is quite incestuous. I mean, you can look at so many even major industrial bands, and members from one band have been in another sort of iconic band. And we're sort of replicating the same thing on a DIY punk level.
Yeah, and awesome. with Sam, it's that goes so far back. I don't even know how that happened. It just kind of feels like I don't know. Sam's just kind of always been there in some capacity and always been involved. I think, if I remember correctly, I think the first time we spoke was when I had just released the very first Carrion demo in, I don't know, 2014, 2013, around there maybe. And I was just, doing the usual promotion thing. And, Sam just happened to be one of the people that I talked to who, was always really into it, like from the start, even back then, despite how different it is now sonically and all the changes that Carrion's gone through those years. And as I said, Sam's always been involved to some extent, not necessarily as a member of the band, but in other ways, whether it be helping out with promotion or just like shooting ideas back and forth. And then eventually I was like, why aren't you just a member? Because you're already involved at a level where, like, the level that I would expect from a full-on member. And yeah, so here we are.
And are you kind of at the point now where you think this is it, or are you looking at adding more people, or are you happy with the 3-piece?
I mean, just because of my background in rock and metal and stuff like that, I wouldn't mind having a live drummer, for example, or something like that. Or Joe did all the bass recordings on this album, and I think he might have done I think there's a little part in it's either Wolves of Hades or Follow the Sirens. It's like one of those ballads towards the end of the album where he there's some guitar stuff that he did.
I think it's
so
Wolves of Hades.
I think it is. Yeah, it's like this little thing towards the end there. Yeah, I don't know. But you know, the more chefs, the bigger the mess. I don't know if that's a saying in English, but I mean that's obvious. You know, the more people are involved, the more complex it gets. And right now, you know, I'm in Norway. Joe is in the UK. Sam is in the US. Mm-hmm. So it's already fairly complicated. So I think I don't know if there would really be a fourth or fifth official member, but I do we do have people in both the UK and the US that could fill some of these other roles if we need it.
Right.
It's
right.
one of those weird things where we may get out playing live and realize that we need to bring someone in. And if we're playing in the UK, for example, my crew from Vanity Kills will sort of step in as needed. You know, if we're in the US, Sam may know some people that can step in where we need them. At the moment, from discussions I've had with Hyde, it seems that we're sticking as a three-piece from a creative standpoint, but you know, things are always open to change. If things need to change, then they will. But for now, we seem to be working quite well as a three.
At least you have that network you can draw on, though, if you need it. Like, especially with the live aspect, that's good to have.
Yeah. It's great because like I've already run it past the VK guys, and they've said, like, if you need someone to jump in and do some drums, or you need someone to jump in and play some guitar, you know, we'll jump in when needed. So it's good to have that
it is,
around for when you need it.
I know a few musicians who like when they tour, say that when they record, they have these people they always work with, but when they tour, it's a nightmare sometimes for them to fill some spaces with live performances, especially on short notice. If something pops up like a gig, like, hey, this is like in 3 weeks or whatever, it's gonna be like last minute, like, who do we get to play bass type thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, can you learn this in like 30 minutes?
I've done that to some of my guys on previous occasions.
So we've asked Hyde this before, but Joe, Brendan has a couple of questions. We'll get him to ask you now in case we lose you, about sort of who your musical influences are and that sort of thing. So Brendan, do you want to ask those questions in case we lose Joe?
Yeah, I had some good ones lined up. First one I wanted to ask was, where's Waldo?
He's over there. He's hiding, but you can see him if you look real close, man. He's probably not wearing pants.
Well, we were talking to someone the other day, and it made me think about, you know, folklore and stuff. And basically, is there like a cool, even modern kind of folklore story or anything from like even like your like town that you live in?
Oh, Joe, you're Welsh, so you do have that. I don't know what it's called, but you know the horse thing.
Oh yeah, there's a thing, and I can't remember what the name of it is in Welsh. But there's a whole thing that around sort of Halloween, a horse's skull with a shawl draped
like
over
Mary
it may turn up at your door, and you've got to provide them with beer. And if you don't provide them with beer, then bad things will happen. So that's pretty fun. There's loads and loads of Welsh legends. Like a lot of the Camelot stuff originates in Wales. That sort of thing is all from around here. As far as modern folklore, the town I'm from, it actually has. It was about 10, 15 years ago. It was known as the suicide capital of Europe. And it had films made about it and documentaries, and some of the people involved in that spate of suicides were friends of mine. And that became something of an urban legend. If you're from Bridgend, there's
wouldn't be that
certain
bridge,
risks
would it?
involved. Sorry, what?
I mean, because you know that I can't think about Wales without thinking of a certain band.
There's a couple. Oh, Manic Street Preachers.
Yeah, who just released a new album today, actually. But see, because I'm sure you know about the whole, disappearance of Richie Edwards and all that.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
And you mentioned the suicide thing, and it reminded me of how the day after he disappeared, they found his car or something by some bridge. So I'm just, wondering if it might be connected.
I don't think that was anywhere near Bridgend, but the problem with Bridgend is we're so central in South Wales that within a 30-mile radius you've got so many artists have come out of this area. So you want to talk, from Tom Jones, who was literally down the road from where I grew up, through Bullet for My Valentine and Funeral for a Friend, and the one with a really nasty person from the same sort of genre whose name shall not be mentioned.
I think I know who you mean, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. The one who's now in prison for a very fucking long time, as well he should be.
Yeah, I think I know.
There's been a lot of bands that have come out of the area that I'm from, which is pretty cool, because I'm not a huge fan of them, but I've known some of them growing up, and when you say you're from Bridgend, it's like, oh, so and so is from there, and it's instant connection.
Well,
sorry, that was a tangent.
No, great tangent.
If would you rather have a pet dinosaur or a pet dragon?
Dinosaur, 100%. No one else need apply. What dinosaur?
Yeah. If you get
Well, I have a catchphrase amongst my band, which is "Unleash the Raptors." So I'll let you figure that one out.
Gotcha. Stegosaurus.
Definitely, 100%.
If we're on these questions still, I have to ask: would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Oh,
one horse-sized duck.
So wait, 100, dude.
So that question,
like a horse-sized duck would fuck you up, man.
I'd probably lose, but someone is going to be there with an Instagram account.
That question.
I feel like you had a good baseball bat and I'd go with the little guys and just figure it out.
Why are we assuming? Why are we assuming that it's aggressive?
Well, I mean, you said fight, right?
Yeah, you have to fight it. That's the scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what if it doesn't want to fight? What if it's a horse-sized duck and it's a pacifist?
It could fly away.
And Joe just decides to be a fucking dick.
If it's a pacifist, I'm a vegan, so I'm leaving it alone. I might ride it for a while, and then all is good.
Yeah, trying to ride it would be pretty fun.
Right?
You're like, come on, settle down here.
I knew this would go somewhere weird.
I would so do that. I'm actually imagining that right now, and I'm totally on board with that idea.
The horse-sized duck, if I can put a saddle on it and then just try and go.
Pegasus type scenario.
Dude, imagine the foie gras you got out of there. Let's go.
So that question was actually Barack Obama, when he was president, still did a Ask Me Anything on Reddit, and that was one of the first 5 questions he got asked. So
great. Thanks, Obama.
So yeah, I mean, if it's good enough for Obama, we can ask it of our guests.
Yep, for sure. I like it.
Oh, back to you, Brendan. Sorry for interrupting with that one.
No, you're good. going back to the folklore kind of stuff, do you have any superstitions?
No, it's the short version. Is the weird thing about the Welsh is that we're very matter of fact. So it is what it is, and if it's not, it's not. Unlike the English, and they seem to love superstition, but we don't.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I have a kind of funny story about some Welsh guys I was hanging out with a while back, where I was in Thailand and I was hanging out with these two Welsh dudes, and they met this American tourist there, and she asked them where they were from, and they said Wales, and she's like, "Is that a town in England?" And they said, "No, it's a country." And she's like, "What do you mean?" Like, "No, it's a country." She's like, "No, but England's the country." Like, no. It's part of Great Britain, but Wales is a country. And like, she's like, "I don't get it." And like, well, we have a language and a flag and all this stuff. And she just could not wrap her head around it at all. And they're trying to explain that Welsh is a language in itself. And it was going nowhere. But so question on that topic: do you speak Welsh?
A certain amount. We were all taught Welsh. With English is the first language, really. Every single road sign is bilingual, though. So we're sort of taught Welsh in primary school, and if we decide to take it any further than that, that's up to us. My personal experience is like I can do it to a level of conversation, but nothing special. I don't even sound Welsh.
No, I didn't realize you were until Hyde mentioned it. I thought you were English.
No, I'm a chameleon, so I've been in London tonight. So my voice has developed an English accent. If you really want to hear a Welsh accent, this is something like it sounds, if you will.
Good lord.
It's like British Swedish.
I actually get English quite a lot. Like most people assume I'm English, but I'm originally from South Africa, but grew up between New Zealand and Australia, and for some reason, everyone thinks I'm English.
There's definitely Australian going on there in some way.
See, you can get it because you're from the UK, but I think people outside of Australia, New Zealand, and the UK don't know where I'm from.
Yeah, it throws a lot of people.
Yeah. It's definitely different. And then you also you're like, oh, I don't want to offend the guy, like who knows? Like I'd probably sound like I'm just like, I don't even know, Popeye, the Sailor Man.
You see, I can imagine that being quite interesting if you're from South Africa, but Australia and New Zealand as well, because those three all have really distinct similarities.
They do.
Right.
So no matter which one of them you're in, no one's really going to be able to place it.
Exactly,
Right.
And that was always the thing.
That he's not like a peep peep cheerio, like English side. Like it's definitely more like refined and laid back.
Yeah.
I always got that. Like no matter what country I was in, everyone would be like, "Where are you from?" Like here. But yeah, I've always I've never been in a country where people assume I'm from that country, which is kind of interesting. But you're right. I mean, there are a lot of very distinct similarities between all three of those. It's the Tri-Nations.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I remember the first time I ever met someone from South
They're
Africa.
all influenced by the same people, right?
Like the first person I ever met from South Africa, I had no idea where he's from. Because I was like, he sounds kind of Australian, but it sounds almost Dutch. What the hell's going on with his voice?
It's if you meet someone who's actually Afrikaans, South African, they don't even sound like English as their first language at all.
No, I've met people since, and I've known, but I think I was about 11 years old when I first heard the accent. And I was like, the fuck is this?
We had a friend in college who was South African, and he had probably one of the thickest South African accents I've ever heard, and he got asked all the time where in Europe he was from.
Oh my god. But it's only now that you've mentioned it that I can hear it in your voice.
It's still there. I just it's kind of deep down. It's like when I talk to my parents, it comes out completely, or if I've been drinking. But apart from that, it's hidden away, suppressed.
I
I
know
gotta
the
get
feeling.
a drunk podcast going. That'd be fun, mate.
My accent will get much thicker. Actually, there's like a certain tipping point where it goes from sounding like slightly South African to aggressively Australian after a certain number of beers. So, because Australian has that like drunk slur to it to begin with.
Yeah, I would get all.
Anyway, sorry, I've taken it off topic again. Back to the
Tangents.
music, I guess.
Oh yeah, this is an interview. Shit, sorry.
What was it? I don't even remember where we were. It's all good. Or how about this? If you were immortal for the day, what would you do?
Immortal for a day.
Yeah, just the day. What would you do?
Well, it's not immortal. It's invincible then, I guess, not immortal.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Invulnerable.
Yeah, invulnerable.
Shit. That's a really good question because it's like, if you're invisible, you know exactly what you do. If you could live forever, you know exactly what you do. But for one day, nothing can kill you. What the fuck would I would hug a polar bear? That's my final answer. I would hug a polar bear.
What about you, Hyde? What would you do?
Well, what am I, invincible?
Yeah, for the day.
I don't know. I'll probably like fling myself off a building or something just to see. What
I
it's like.
thought about like driving a car like off a mountain or something.
Yeah,
See how high
no,
you bounce.
exactly.
Yeah, I'd probably go skydiving without a parachute.
That's a good one.
I think that would be pretty cool.
All our
Okay.
self-destructive tendencies are coming out, huh?
I am having weird deja vu right now. This is freaking me out.
Oh no.
There's not been enough drugs for this.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question because I'm curious about this. Musically, what bands got you into music? I mean, when I say into music, I mean, what bands really got you into listening to music? Everyone heard music growing up, but what bands got you into it?
Hyde, I'm gonna let you start with this one, man. I've been taking over this interview.
Well, I mean, you're here for a reason. I told you to come, so I don't really care. But I don't know. I guess I've already kind of mentioned this a little earlier, and probably in the previous interview as well. But just growing up listening to like Misfits and Kiss or Wasp and Motley Crue and stuff like that, and finding the industrial side of it, like Nine Inch Nails or Coil, for example. That's pretty much where I have this two distinct memories of me as a child, and overall I don't really have a lot of memories of me as a child, but actually, you know what, I have three, and they're all related to music, and they're all related to the question. So the first one is me being, I don't know, 9 or 10 maybe, and I was hanging out with a friend of mine from school, and we're going through this little storage room in the house that I grew up in, and we found, because my stepdad, who I grew up with, he used to play guitar, so I found what I assume is his old guitar, and it was all beat up. It had like one string maybe, and no strap. And I'm a child, and this is like a proper electric guitar for an adult. So I remember 9-year-old me struggling to hold this thing up because it doesn't have a strap, right? And just kind of plucking on this one singular, probably badly out of tune string, trying to play along to Bark at the Moon by Ozzy Osbourne, just me and my friend in my bedroom. And that's the type of thing that I would do a lot growing up. I mean, another instance of that would be pretty much the same kind of thing, but without the guitar, and just kind of miming along to Poison or Schools Out by Alice Cooper. With this, I had like a stuffed, kind of like like a stuffed animal, but it was a snake. So I have no idea where I got it from or anything, but I would like put that around my neck and like blast Alice Cooper and pretend that I'm like playing this huge fucking stadium show. And then when I was like a little bit older, like getting into my teenage years, like 13, 14, and starting my first band and all that, and just I remember my stepdad drove me from where we lived to a town like an hour away, with the only reason of doing so being to buy me a bass guitar and a bass amp, because at this point I had started my very first band, and after a bit of moving around and playing drums for a little bit and guitar and stuff like that, I landed on wanting to play bass. So I told him one day, he asked me what I'm going to do in the band. I told him I'm going to play bass. So he, I think it's like the next day or something, we're in the car going to get a bass, and I remember coming home and like having Shout at the Devil by Motley Crue and The Crimson Idol by Wasp, and just putting on the CD and like playing along and trying to learn these songs that I'd been already listening to pretty much every day. And I remember very distinctly this one moment where I'm trying to play along to some song from one of these albums, and I'm like so like lost in like in the zone, I guess, in my little like fantasy world where I'm like a rock star or whatever. And I remember there's a TV on the wall, and I'm standing a little bit too close to it, and I'm like swinging around and almost driving the neck of the bass through the TV. So that's kind of a little bit of, I guess, my backstory, I suppose. Just a lot of 80s rock, and when I was like 2 years old, and it's just me and my mom living on our own. She would obviously play a lot of music around the house, a lot like Scorpions and stuff like that, or Patti Smith. And I remember we had this VHS cassette tape, and it was sort of a best of, I think, like a best of and a live video of The Doors. So that's something that she would, if I'm like, being a child crying and all that, she would just put me down in front of the TV and put on this The Doors tape, and I would just fall asleep listening to Jim Morrison. And the funny thing about that is later on, I would sort of rediscover The Doors, I suppose, on my own, and then hearing a lot of the songs that I would have heard when I was 2 years old, and just feeling like I've heard this somewhere before, but I can't really figure out where or how I know this. But yeah, so that's just always been around, music in any capacity, and the whole thing with me just in my bedroom fucking rocking out, like I don't know where that came from. Like it's just, that's just a natural development. That's just how it went. Like I never had a moment, like a very clear moment where you see something or you hear something or whatever it might be, and you go, oh, I want to do this. Like I never really had that epiphany. It was just very natural.
And what about you, Joe?
I was really lucky that like my parents had a bit of a generational gap between them. So like my dad was into 70s rock and prog, and sort of early heavy metal, whereas my mum, she was very much into 80s new wave and synth pop. So there was a multitude of records around my house that I could play with as a little kid. But for me, it was like as uncool comparatively as it sounds. The first moment where I sort of figured I want to do that was when I first discovered Michael Jackson. I was mesmerized by the dude when I was young, and that sort of set me on the I want to be an entertainer, and then through life discovering, listening to everything my parents had, which was anything from Sabbath to Genesis to the Beatles, Elvis, The Cure, you name it, and then sort of tracing that through to what was big when I was a kid, which was sort of the early industrial well, not the early industrial, but the early 90s industrial sort of vibes, your Motley Crues and your Nine Inch Nails, and this is tangential, but sort of finding where I wanted to be in that space from what I'd seen from watching Michael Jackson for so many years to, oh right, okay, I found the music I want to hear now. That's what I want to make. And that's where it all took off for me. I wanted to entertain. I wanted to do what he was doing, but the way that those guys were doing it.
Yeah, my earliest childhood memories of music are with my dad, and one of them, actually, funny enough, is Michael Jackson as well. I have three. One was Michael Jackson, one was Pink Floyd's The Wall, and the other one was the soundtrack to the War of the Worlds.
Dude, those are three albums that I had sat in that collection that mesmerized me as a kid. So I'm 100% behind you on that.
Yeah, all three of those, man, they stood out. I mean, my dad played a lot of different stuff, but those three really stuck with me. And Pink Floyd has remained to this day in my top 10 bands of all time. I just love Pink Floyd. I might come from my childhood memories of them, or it might be because I genuinely love the music. I can't tell you, but yeah, they're still up there for me. Michael Jackson, I still enjoy from time to time. I still think he's fantastically talented, but I don't listen to him as often. In War of the Worlds, there's only one song I play regularly, and that is the one. What's it called? Now You're Not Here. You know that song?
Oh, that's such a good tune.
Yeah.
My dad and I still do it at least once a month, where we'll sit around in the living room, get drunk, and blast The Wall, and piss off the neighbors, because he is the premier Pink Floyd fan.
Oh, really?
That's the go-to.
That's awesome. I'm actually going to their exhibit in LA next month. That's like a Pink Floyd career exhibit that shows the whole history as a band.
Oh, the jealousy is real, bro.
Yeah, for me, their best album, and possibly for me, this might even be my favorite album of all time. I don't know if I have a favorite, but if I do, this is one of them. Is Wish You Were Here. I absolutely love that album.
That is a good one.
That's such a great one. Dark Side of the Moon too, though.
That's a little bit down the list for me. For me, it goes Wish You Were Here, then Animals, Brick in the Wall, then Dark Side of the Moon. That's my top four. Dark Side of the Moon, I get why people love it, and I get why it's popular, but it doesn't have those same epic tracks where the music just unfolds for 10, 15 minutes. You know what I mean?
You're right there. It's a much more commercial album than those, but it's still.
Have you heard Doom Side of the Moon?
No.
It's basically the doomy version of Dark Side of the Moon.
Is it covers?
What are you talking, doom metal?
Oh, it's fucking so goddamn good.
Is it cover band? Is it lots of bands doing covers, or is it one album by one band, or?
No, it's a guy, Kyle. Why can't I remember the name of the band he's from? Oh my god, this is bad for me. Kyle Schutt is his name, and he did this Doom Side of the Moon project, and it's Oh, he's from the Sword. Sorry, I should have remembered that right away.
Oh yeah, the Sword. Yeah, I've seen them live. Yeah, good band.
Yeah. So he was the guitarist from them, and he did Dark Side of the Moon, and it's like one of the best renditions of Dark Side of the Moon I've heard.
Okay.
It's so good.
You have to check that
I'm
out.
gonna have to put that on in the car while I'm driving home tomorrow.
Oh my god, you're gonna love it. It's so good. And it's perfect. Like I said, like Doom Side of the Moon. Like they made it doomy.
Awesome.
Nice.
Are you a fan of the Floyd or any of that like early prog rock stuff, or is that not your jam?
Me for sure. I love it.
Yeah, I'll listen to it here and there, but I'm more so interested in Syd Barrett, that whole era and his solo albums and all that stuff.
Okay.
Like
I'd probably say Peter Gabriel was the best Genesis singer too.
I don't listen to Genesis, so I wouldn't know. I'm sure I've heard it though. Like I know I have. My mom's played it, but I don't know. Just the reason that I would, I guess, drift more towards Syd Barrett it's not purely musical. Like there's more, sometimes you listen to something because you relate to the artist as a person.
Right.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So it's more about that with the Syd Barrett stuff.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, for me, I cover metal music mostly with Cave Dweller stuff, but I actually listen to an equal amount, maybe sometimes even more, of like classic prog rock stuff. Like if you look at my vinyl collection, it's like a third metal, and then the rest is all like Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull, Traffic, Yes, like all that stuff. That's what I play at home most of the
It's
time.
good.
That's really cool.
I grew up with like
There's
Aerosmith
something
and
about that stuff. It's just
Steely
like
Dan.
yeah, Steely Dan's fantastic as well. Yeah, they're a good band, very varied. Yeah, I actually have to head off in about 10-15 minutes, so we just do you want to quickly go over the release date and all that for the upcoming Carrion album and a few more details about that before we have to wrap up?
Yeah, sure. If I remember correctly, it will be November 25th, either the 25th or the 26th, and it's going to be on Brutal Resonance Records, so it'll be on their Bandcamp site, which is brutalresonance.bandcamp.com, and it will be on, of course, digital download, as well as we're doing CDs this time around.
Nice.
And something else I was going to ask you, is it going to be on Spotify or not?
Yeah, it's going to be on all those streaming sites, Spotify, Apple Music, all of those.
Awesome. And live performances, do you have like sort of a time in mind when you're going to try and make that happen, or is it just like we want to do this at some point sort of thing?
Well, that's the thing, because if you look back throughout, especially the past 3 or 4 years, I've basically put out an album every year for, I guess this is the 3rd year in a row, and you can probably go further back. But this time around, what I'd want to do is, because we have never spent as much time on an album as we did for this one. Like by the time this album comes out, it will be, I don't know, a year, maybe over a year since we started writing the very, very first early demos for it. So with that in mind, I also want to give it the release that it deserves and give it, the push, so to speak. So hopefully, if it's possible, we would try to do some shows in the UK as well as in the US, and just focus more so on playing live whenever we can, wherever, instead of starting up a new album or anything like that again.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And single wise, is that it for the singles before the album release, or have you got more planned?
No, this previous single, Revenant, is probably going to be the last one. We did very early on. We did talk about doing like 3 or 4 singles, but you know, the first single was supposed to be released in May this year. But, you know, shit happens and things get moved around, and the label, of course, they have their own schedule, and there's, we're not the only artist on there. So, no, there's not going to be any more singles, but the album's going to be, let's see, we're almost through September now. So it's not really that long until the album drops, and, there's going to be pre-orders and all that kind of stuff. And we're also doing I think we're doing it's either late October or early November, we'll be doing this like a streamed release party where you'll get to hear the album in full, as well as me, Joe, and Sam. We're probably gonna pick out a few songs that we like that has maybe had some kind of influence on what we've done on this album, or just had some influence on how we ended up becoming who we are musically.
Right.
So, there will be things happening here and there, but there's not going to be any more singles now.
Okay. And we normally end on that note, but I did want to ask one more question while we have you both here. If this is normally something Brendan asked, but I'll quickly ask it. If you guys could play live with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Dead or alive?
Well, you can do one answer for each if you want. Someone you have to. Okay, so you can answer twice. Once for alive. Or
Yeah,
once
it
for
could be like
anyone.
the ultimate group, like spiritually connected.
They'll come back as a hologram. We'll make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking hard. I don't know.
Wait, you say you're gonna make it happen? Is that contractually obliged now? We answered this
Are you a
question.
necromancer?
You have to make that shit happen.
I mean, we'll just see if this podcast holds up in court.
I'm gonna say dead would be Prince, and alive would be Stabbing Westwood.
Oh, Stabbing Westward. All right.
Interesting.
I don't know if I can really think of anyone who's alive. I know for dead people, I don't know if it would even make any fucking sense, but I'd probably want to do something like the Lords of the New Church and just bring back Steve Baders from the grave.
Nice.
And that's probably going to be it. It's just going to be us and Lords of the New Church, because I just can't think of anyone who's alive.
It's a tough question.
I know.
Yeah, but then it's also like all these iconic people where if I had the chance to just play with anyone, like most of those people are dead. So
Yeah, we've asked some people this, and it's like really spun them out. Like, dude, why would you ask me that like on the spot? Like, I have no idea. But anyway, I want to say thanks again for coming on the show. It's always great to chat to you. And Joe, it's great to meet you. Thanks for coming on as well. We really appreciate you taking the time.
You too, bro. You too.
yeah, thanks for having us.
Keep an eye on our page, obviously. We're going to be covering the Carrion album at some point before the release date, so we'll have a review up for that. And if you're in our group, Hyde shares stuff in there all the time, so check out any of the singles or music videos he shares in the Cave Dweller group. And thanks for coming on, and tune in next time for another guest.
Yeah, thank you.